good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our final QuickBooks Connect call for the 2020 year. Today we'll be covering budgeting and all that entails. I want to welcome Debbie Denny as our presenter today. Debbie has more than 20 years of experience working in QuickBooks. She is Accounting Services Manager at Hawkins Ash CPAs, and she is an Advanced Certified QuickBooks Desktop ProAdvisor and a Certified QuickBooks Online ProAdvisor. She specializes in software consulting and training, small business accounting, and tax preparation. She also has experience in Sage 50 software. So she has a lot of great experience, and I'm hoping that you can pull some great tips and pointers from this session. Just a few housekeeping items. All attendees are in listen-only mode. That means that you're muted at this time. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please enter your questions in the GoToWebinar control panel. There's a tab that says questions. Please submit your questions there, and as Debbie is going along, she will answer those questions for you or wrap up with answers at the end. So Debbie, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Corey. As Corey said, I'm Debbie Denny with Hawkins Ash in our Green Bay office, and we're going to talk about budgeting today. And QuickBooks has a couple different tools when you look at the budgeting. So if you go under Company on the top menu bar, there is Planning and Budgeting items that we can use. There's Budgets, Forecasts, a Cash Flow Projector, and a Business Plan tool. And I can attest that the Business Plan tool is a very thorough business plan that QuickBooks walks you through various questions, and it will, based on your answers and how you're entering everything, it will put together a very good business plan for you. So if you're starting a new business, or even if you know somebody that's starting a business, using this business plan tool in QuickBooks works really well. We're going to talk about budgets, forecasts, and some of the cash flow projector information today. So you might ask what the difference between budgeting and forecasting is. And a budget is a detailed financial outline of what the business thinks will happen over a period of time. Normally it's a year. You normally budget for the year that's coming up. And the budget includes normally the company's revenue, expenses, cash flow, and financial position. And you can get this information off of your financial reports. Let's see. So a budget you're going to use as a tool to run your business, compare it to how you're doing currently to what you budgeted for. So that's kind of what budgeting is, where forecasting is a projection of what will happen at a higher level. And it's generally key revenue items and overall expenses. And it's normally done, top level, just basic accounts. It can be done for them top down or bottom up, and you can go through and set up different forecasts. And budgeting and forecasting are different functions. They're not mutually exclusive. So you might have a forecast, and based on the forecast, that might need to change your budget, because a good forecast feeds the development of a sound budget. So now that I've confused you thoroughly, if you don't really want to use the forecast, because it's kind of the same as a budget, it's just another tool. We're going to talk about budgeting. And in budgeting, what you want to do is start with a realistic projection. You want to think, when you look at your profit and loss for the past year, you want to be realistic about it and not, the skies are sunny and blue and everything's going to be perfect, because we know that's not true in the real world. So some reports you might want to think about looking at prior to setting up your budget is if you look at the reports, company and financial, and do a profit and loss standard. I'm just going to run this for my current year because I'm in a sample company and I'm going to run this through the 2024 year. So this is my profit and loss. Well, for budgeting purposes, I want to see how much my P&L, how much my accounts change per month. So in my normal profit and loss standard, I'm going to choose the show columns from total only to month. And I'll just make them a little bit shorter so we can put them on the screen. And here's my profit and loss by month for all of my accounts. So this is something that I'm probably going to use when I budget. Because that way I can see, you know, which months I'm making more money, which months I'm losing money, you know, and how things swing from month to month. You know, based on my profit and loss actual for last year, I might want to, you know, bring in new staff because I noticed that, you know, we're busier in one month than the other, and it might help make my decisions on hiring. It might help make decisions on how much money I'm going to spend in advertising and when I'm going to spend that. You know, when your insurance bill comes, things like that, because you kind of know those things on an annual basis. So the profit and loss standard is a good one to start off with. What you can also do is based on the profit and loss standard and by month, I can just double click on this bottom number and now I'm going to get my accounts by month. Actually, this one is showing me by account. So it's going to give me my total by account. If I want my total, I can have my total by month. So this is giving me my totals by month of my inflows and my outflows. And what I can also do is expand my rows so I get all the details. So you can see my paychecks, my invoicing, my checks that are going out, things like that. So this shows you on a monthly basis what your transactions are for that month. So that'll kind of give you, for expenses, kind of a general, you know, this is what I spent last year. Do I think I'm going to spend that this year? So it's a good tool for, you know, when you're doing your budgeting and forecasting. You can also sort this by name. So then you can see, you know, here's my different checks to my insurance company, my bank account, my property management services for rent. There's also some additional reports. If you want to look at, if you're doing a budget for your balance sheet, you can actually run your balance sheet by month. So I'm just going into the balance sheet standard, customizing the report to do this fiscal year, and changing the display columns by month. And here it gives me my balance sheet by month. So what I might want to do is I might want to export this to Excel. Maybe I can add some columns to get my cash inflows and outflows, you know, how much my cash changes by month, things like that. My inventory, I could, you know, look at my inventory. How much inventory do I expect to, or do I plan on ordering? You can see I start with my total, my materials inventory. In March, I have 80,000. Well, in April, I have 103,000. So I know I'm going to need cash flow to purchase that materials inventory that went up $23,000. If you plan on purchasing a new vehicle, or some new office equipment or machinery for your business. You could budget your balance sheet and then cash flow wise budget for those pieces of machinery. And also if you've got a loan for those machinery, for that machinery or those fixed assets that you're purchasing, you can set those up if you're going to budget by balance sheet. Most companies I know mainly balance or mainly budget by the profit and loss. It's the most popular one. So again, I'm going to kind of do most of my information today on the profit and loss part of the budgeting. There's also some additional reports you might want to run. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into company, and there's a company snapshot available. And if you have never gone into here, this is kind of a fun graphical area of QuickBooks. So I'm going to look at the prior year income comparison. Well, on the sample company, 2023 doesn't have a lot of information you can see. But here's my income and expense trend this year to date. Shows me my income and expenses. Well, I can see in July, my income is way down. And when you put your cursor over it, it will show you what the actual amount is. So you can also double click on that and it'll give you a report on what actually was in July that makes up that amount. So these are some really nice reports. There's also some additional reports that aren't showing on my screen. And if you want any of the reports, you don't want to see any of these, you can just X out of them and it'll take them off your screen. It'll ask you first if you're sure, but you can also add content. And these are some additional, the ones that say add, there's some additional reports that you can add to this snapshot. And there's different pages, so I'm on 1 of 4, so I can show an income breakdown. There's best-selling items. That might be a really good one. I'm going to add that. Top vendors by expense, vendors to pay, reminders. So there's a lot of different reports that you can even add if you don't have them already on your company snapshot. So when I'm looking at these best-selling items, I'm going to maybe look at them by the quarter or by last year. You can change your dates on a lot of these different reports. Let's see, so if I look at my top customers by sales, I'm going to make sure that, you know, I keep in front of Denny's Pool Depot because they spend a lot of money with me. You know, I'm going to look at my income expense trends and see, you know, why my expenses might be really high in one month versus another. Maybe there's something I can do. I might want to look at a vendor report to, you know, decide, do I want to work with the vendor maybe and change my terms? So a lot of these reports will give you some good information. Your payments and customers. So there's a lot you can do with these also. And again, there's additional content for these screens. So there's some really good information in here. I'm just going to look at my top vendors by expense. I want to look at that. So Lips Pool Service, I order a lot of product from them, as you can see. Top vendors by expense. So maybe I might want to give them a call and say, well, you know, last year I did, $35,000 of business with you and my terms are net 10. Do you think we could make those net 20 or net 30? You can work with vendors that way and that could help your cash flow. So, those are some reports you might want to look at. In the reports section also, you've got your vendors and payables. You can run a transaction list by vendor. And here's your transaction list per vendor that you're working with for this specific time period. So there's a lot of different reports you can run. So feel free, just to play around. So what I'm going to do now is go out of the snapshot. And I'm going to look at, let's see, setting up my budgets. And again, I'm going to go into company, planning and budgeting, and setting up budgets. So I'm going to do a new budget. So when I went to company set up budgets, what it did is it brought me to the current year budget, the fiscal year profit and loss by account and class. You can see I've got a couple different ones set up here. I've got a profit and loss by account and job, or profit and loss by account. So you want to be careful when you're setting up your budgeting that you don't duplicate what you're setting up. So I'm going to do account and class. Normally, you're not going to do a budget by customer job, normally because for customer jobs, you are mainly compare that through estimates, but that's something that's also available out there. I'm going to run it by class because a lot of people that use classes, maybe they've got different departments, different divisions, different locations. That's where you might want to set them up by class. And there's current class. The classes I have for this company file are automatic pool systems, manual pool systems, custom, installation, or extended warranty. Those are the classes that I use. So what I might want to do for reporting purposes or for planning my new budget is I could go into reports, my profit and loss standard, and I'm going to choose this year. But now what I want to do is I want to show only one of my classes. So I'm going to click on the filters tab of my customized reports. I'm going to click on class, and now I'm going to choose a specific class. If I just want to see my automatic pool systems, I choose that class, click OK, and now I can show my columns by month. So for my automatic pool systems, these are my income and expenses by month. And I might just want to customize this report, add automatic, and then save this, memorize it. And I might set up a budgeting report group. Right now, I'm just going to set it up in accountant. And then if I'm going to do a different class, I'm just going to go back into customize reports, go into filters, and change my class to manual pool systems. And while I'm customizing reports, I'm going to change my header and footer to manual. So when you're doing your budget, you can do it, for each year. These reports will be in your system. I'm going to do a new one, and I'm going to again put it in accountant. So I can run this report for each class that I have. And then next year, when I go to do my reporting, I can just go to reports, memorize reports, accountant, and here's my different profit and loss by month, by class. So those are some things, if you are tracking classes, that you might want to do. And so again, here's where you put your class. If I'm just doing it, if I don't track classes, I can just do my profit and loss by account. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new budget for next year. I'm going to specify the year. Again, this is a sample company, so it's way out in the future. Here's where I'm going to tell QuickBooks if I'm going to do a budget by profit and loss or by balance sheet. Here's where I tell QuickBooks if I want to do it by customer job or if I want to do the budget by class. And again, if you do it by class, you're going to be entering multiple budgets. I'm going to click next. And I'm going to create the budget based on the previous year's data. You can do it from scratch also. So I'm going to finish, and what it's going to do is it's going to bring in all the prior year's data for my future year. So this is going to look at year end, the year of 2024, when it brings in this data, because we're doing the budget for 2025. So my different classes are going to have different budgets. So now if I'm going to look at my budget, oh, excuse me a second, should turn off the volume on my cell phone. Just give me 1 second to do that. Oh, come on. I think that's the first time that's happened. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. But here's where it's going to bring in your information if you're doing the profit and loss by class. You're going to want to set up each class. You're going to want to set up a budget for that class. And if you've got different location or different departments, again, when we looked at those reports, that's kind of what you're going to base those off of, what you did the last year for those specific classes. So I'm just going to create a new budget right now. I'm going to do it the easy way and just do it by no additional criteria. And I'm going to base it on last year's data. So here it's going to give me my profit and loss by class from last year's data. And actually, I'm wondering if this is actually pulling up 2024 or 2025 or 2023, because there's not a lot of data in here. So I'm thinking this is pulling up 2023. How could I tell that for sure? Well, I'm just going to run a report, profit and loss standard, and look at, yep. So that's what it's pulling up, the 2023 year. So what I want to do for 2025 is go through and look at my profit and loss for 2024. And I'm going to drag that screen over. So what I did is I just exported to Excel, and then you can either print it off or just leave it in Excel. I have multiple screens on my computer, so while I'm doing my budgeting, I can look at one screen and have my Excel spreadsheet there. And then on my other screen, I have my budgets. So from that, I can see that from 2024, I had $486,000 in pool, cover, and equipment sales. Well, say I expect 2025 to increase. I have a lot of good salespeople now and they know the business, so I'm, really positive. So what I can do is I can say, okay, for this year, I think I'm going to be at $500,000 for pool cover and equipment sales. So what I can do is I'm going to have $500,000. And from that number, I can either copy that across or adjust the row amounts. So if you think it's going to be even throughout the year, you can do that, or you can decrease it by each month or increase it by each month. Start at which month, and then increase it by a percentage or decrease it by a percentage. If you're increasing it by a percentage, you can also enable compounding. So different options out there. So let's say 500,000 is my end goal. So I don't want to necessarily adjust my amounts. Let's say I'm going to copy it across, and let's say I'm going to say that's going to be for the year. I'm going to divide that by 12. And all I'm doing when I type in the 500,000, I am hitting the slash mark for a divided by, and I'm going to say 12 months and hit enter, and that's my monthly amount. And I'm going to copy that across. So in the end, my annual total is $500,004 due to rounding. Well, let's say I know January and February are pretty low in sales. So I'm going to just change this to maybe $20,000. And then let's say May, June, and July are pretty high in sales. So I'm going to change these months to, let's say 60,000, 65. And just as you're going along, you can see my annual total. Well, I'm expecting 500,000. So again, I'm going to maybe adjust these other amounts. Maybe I want these to be flat dollar amounts. So I'm pretty close to my 500,000 right here in my annual total. And what I can do here is there we go. So I'm up to my 500,000. So you can feel free to play around with your numbers. Again, you're going to want to look at your profit loss for the prior year, kind of get a handle on, which months you're making most of your money, and follow along that with your budget. If you know that maybe something is going to come up, you want to build the budget for that. Maybe you're expecting, like in my pool business that I'm working in my ACE pool systems, maybe I'm expecting, say one of my vendors went out of business and I know my other vendor I use for inventory is more expensive. So I know I'm going to have to increase my cost of materials because of that, or my cost of goods sold because of that. If you're in an industry, say a fabrication shop or something like that, and the cost of steel goes up, depending on the markets, you're going to want to adjust your inventory for that. If you've got a company vehicle, if you know your vehicle is, starting to get run down and you're going to be putting more into maintenance, you might want to build your budgeting around that. For your insurance, if you billed a bulk amount in a certain month, you're going to want to build your budget around that or do a prepaid, things like that. Let's say meals and entertainment. A lot of professional industries Meals and entertainment, they go golfing in the summertime. So you might want to build up your meals and entertainment for golfing. Like lawyers and doctors, right? And accountants. I don't golf though. You know, just different things. Maybe you've got a lawsuit pending, so you're going to have more legal fees. Your rent is normally going to be a flat dollar amount unless you know, maybe intend on moving. Just different supplies, things like that. Your telephone, if that fluctuates or if that's pretty much the same. Your wages, if you've got a good crew, you don't expect anybody to leave. You know, you're not going to have that training expense. So you're going to want to look, in this case, my office wages and then my direct wages. So, you know, you're going to want to look at individual pieces, but then, you know, as a whole in the total column. So I can build my budget based on what I did last year. So let's say my revenue for installation last year was 17,000. Well, I'm going to increase my labor prices. So let's say it's going to be more this year, this coming year, I should say. So I am going to say for 2025, I'm going to have $20,000 or $25,000 worth of labor revenue. And I'm going to divide that by 12. So about 2,000 a month if I copy that across. Well, again, I'm going to want to look at my sales. So if my sales is going up, like in March, my sales goes up. My installation service should probably go up too, because I'm going to be at that point in time hiring maybe more installers. I am going to, you know, increase maybe overtime, things like that. So I'm going to want to increase my installation service because I'm increasing my prices, number one. And, you know, I'll have more people. So when I get to the more people part of it, I'm going to do, for the wages installation, I'm going to increase that. So my installation service, say, is $3,000. And I'm going to just say, so let's say I expect 32.5 for installation service, and maybe repair service, I might bill out, oh, let's see, last year I billed out only $279 in repair service. So maybe I'm just going to say, no repairs this year, so I'm going to leave that at 0. If I have any freight income with the pool service, I don't think I'm going to have much freight income. I'm going to leave that blank. So my cost of goods sold is the next big thing, which is inventory shortages or overages. I'm going to leave that out because I expect my inventory to be spot on, which that doesn't always happen. But for my cost of goods sold, if I look at the prior year, my prior year cost of goods sold is $226,000. Well, I know my costs are going to go up because I had a vendor go out of business and the other vendor I'm using is going to be more expensive. So let's just say I'm going to be at 35,000 or 335,000, right, for the year. Again, I'm going to take that and divide it by 12, and I'm going to copy that across. If I know, say, my labor, I can do, let's say, my installation labor. I'm not going to do that until, let's say, April. That's when I'm going to start hiring people. So I'm going to say, let's see, my labor last year was 14,000. I'm going to guess that's going to be at least 20,000 for this year. So let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months at I have higher sales and I'm anticipating higher labor costs. So I'm going to say 20,000. And that's divided by, what did I say? 7, let's go 8 months. Oops, divided by 8. So I'm at 2,500 per month. Well, I'm going to adjust that row amount, starting at the currently selected month. And actually, I'm going to do this for 2,000. Just row amounts, currently selected month, and I'm going to increase that the months across by, let's just say 15%. And I'm going to compound it. So what it's going to do is it's going to take that times 15% to get to 2,300 in April. It's going to take 2,300 times 15% to get to the amount for May. It's going to take 2,645 times 15% to get to the other months. And let's just say by, say, August, I expect it to go back down to 2,500. So you can adjust your wages that way, or your budgeting that way. You know, if you're a retailer, your budget is going to be higher probably in the winter months closer to Christmas. People are buying gift certificates perhaps, things like that. So, you know, take those things into consideration. For my advertising expense, again, I'm going to look at my last year's and I'm going to look at my sales. Well, July, that's in the middle of summer. My July sales and August sales were pretty small. So I'm going to up my advertising budget in, say, April and May and June. So that's one way, again, to forecast for budgeting and also help you planning for the new year. And again, if you want to put in $1 amount for the whole year, you can do that, say $1,000 a month. Copy across. There you go. Again, big service charges, if that is a flat dollar a month, you can do that. So a lot of different things you can do. Let's see here. I've got some questions coming in. See if I can see what those are. Now, let's see. Let's get to the first question. Okay, it looks like I've got a little bit of echo going on, and I'm sorry about that. I hope you can hear me okay. Let's see. If anybody wants to chat in or put something in the questions, if the microphone is still echoing really bad, I can try to get on via a phone call. So if you want to chat something in on that, let me know. Okay, so let's see. Okay, we got a message that says I don't hear an echo. Okay, that's good. We have moved our office back in August, and based on the new building, there has been an echo, but they put some soundproofers in, so it is much better than it was. Okay, somebody's got QuickBooks Online, and I believe you can do budgeting with QuickBooks Online. I haven't actually done that myself, so, but I'm pretty sure you can. Let's see, if you have a profit and loss from a previous year in a different software, can you easily enter it into QuickBooks for a comparison? I do not believe you can import budgets. Let's just see. I'm almost certain you can't, but that's something that I can double check and get back to you on. So I don't think we can, because customer vendor information is mainly what you can import. Yeah, you might need to enter it individually by month if you've got a different program that you need to get it in. Okay. All right, so I think those are the questions that I have so far. And again, I'm just going to copy these across. So you can kind of get the gist of budgeting. You might want to start with your budget and just do the easy things. I know my bank service charge is $15 a month. I know my rent is, say it's $750 a month. I'm going to copy that across. Start with the easy things. My legal or my accounting fees, well, my tax return is normally done in March or April. So I know my bill is coming during that time, so I'm going to add, say, an extra $1,000 for my accounting fees in April. And maybe my accountant does my quarterly payroll reports. So in July, I know I'm going to have another $250 for my quarterly payroll reports, which seems kind of expensive considering my tax return is $1,000. So, but you can base that off of what your, normal expenses are. But again, you can kind of project those things based on what has happened in the past. Maybe you do contributions annually. Well, if you've got a specific charity that you give to, you can always go up and do your contributions. You might want to ask your accountant for your monthly depreciation for the next year. And then you could put in your depreciation expense. So a lot of different things that you can, think about. And if you, just want to say, okay, I can't deal with budgeting anymore, just save it. And you can always come back to it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at my reports and look at my budgeting reports. I've got my budget overview. So I'm going to look at my 2025 budget by account. And it's going to give me an example, account by month. I can also do, if I was doing it by class, I could do account by class or class by month. So I'm going to do account by month. And I'm going to finish. So now this is my budget. Let's bring up last year. I know I've got numbers in. For my budget for 24. So this is my budget for 2024. I'm expecting to make about $89,000 on my profit and loss. So that's just my budget, the overview of my budget. Another report is, and this is going to be your more effective report, is the budget versus actual. So again, I can do my budget, my profit and loss by account, or my account and class. And look at 24 by account and class. I'm going to do class by month. So here you can see, here's my different classes. And this is what I budgeted, and it tells me what I'm over budget and that percentage, if I'm doing it by class. And let's just do budget versus actual. I'm going to do it count by month. I'm just going to change my dates here. And so in 24, I don't have any, let's see, I chose the wrong account, I think, or the wrong report. Let's do this one. Here we go. And what I can do with this report, my budget versus actual, say I want to see the percentage of the budget. I can customize this report and I can uncheck percent of budget. I can uncheck difference. I might just want to see my actual versus my budget. So that's up to you. So let's just say I want to see if I'm over or under budget. So as I go down for January, I can see I had a net income of $3,000. Well, I projected to lose money. So that's good. And so on and so forth. So you can kind of see, you know, which months you're over budget, which months you're under budget. And then we'll get to the total at the end. So here's my total, what I'm over budget by. And let's just say I want to see this by total only. I'm just going to change my columns by total only. Or maybe I want to see it by quarter. Here's my budget report by quarter. Let's change this to the year. So here's where it tells me when I'm over budget. Well, here let's see, I only spent $225,000 on cost of goods sold and budgeted for $249,000. So I saved $24,000. That's good. I budgeted that my gross profit would be $199,000. I came up at $209,000, so that's good. So I'm doing pretty good with my budgeting here. And again, just kind of take a look at what you budgeted versus what it actually was, and be realistic. That's the biggest thing is be realistic, because a lot of times you're going to be making financial decisions based on your profit and loss budget. You know, whether you're going to hire people, whether you're going to let people go, maybe you expect some really slow months. So you're going to, you know, your budgeting is a lot of comparisons, and you want to be realistic, because if you're unrealistic, you're going to make the wrong decisions throughout the year. And what you can always do also is to change your budget throughout the year. Maybe you found a new supplier and their prices were cheaper. So go through and you can edit your budget. Go back into your budget, and maybe my cost of goods sold, maybe it's going to drop. Say I'm going to be $25,000. So you can edit your budgets, but technically you should kind of stick to the main budget. So, you know, just a couple things you might want to think of. Maybe you hired a new salesperson. So that might be, you know, as you're going along the year, you might want to increase your budget for your sales wages, just different things like that. So that's a lot of my budgeting. I'm going to talk a little bit of forecasting. Let's see, I think there was one other budget report we want to talk about. My profit versus and loss budget performance. And again, this gives me, based on my time period, right now I'm just looking at December, but it does give me my year-to-date and my annual. If I wanted to, I could choose, change my date range to whatever you want it to be. Forecasting is a lot like budgeting. It's almost identical, setting up a forecast. And again, you can do it by class, by job, create it from scratch or the previous year's actual, and it looks identical to a budget. But maybe for your budget, if you want, or for your forecast, maybe you want a higher view on that. So when you run your profit and loss, by month, I don't want to see all my sub-accounts. So I'm going to collapse, and I only want to see the main accounts. So that gives you a little bit higher view. Maybe you just want your total income numbers, your total cost of goods sold, so you get your total profit and your total expense. You might only have a couple lines on that forecast, but it's pretty much exactly like your budgets. And for my reporting, there are also some forecasts, the forecast overview and your forecast versus actual. So it's pretty much identical to your budget versus actual. Some additional planning reports are setting up a forecast. And let's go out of here, go back there. Setting up a forecast. Oh, sorry, not setting up a forecast. I was going to do cash projections. Cash flow projector. So this is going to look out 6 weeks into your future. And again, this is a sample company. So I can see a sample cash flow. But what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, this is the account I'm going to be looking at, my checking account. You want to make sure you have your bank statements balanced. Then it's going to look at your projected receipts based on, it's going to use the weighted average, or you can change it manually. So again, you can make certain decisions for your cash forecast. No, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do the weighted average. You can also put in accounts. I'm just going to use last 6 weeks. No, that's probably not a good one. There's no money in there. So I'm going to project them manually. So you can go through and set up what amount you expect to get in that manually. So again, it's going to want in weekly intervals. And it wants 6 weeks. And again, you can put in a description. I'm just making up numbers. And actually, I'm in 2020, which is not going to give me anything because I should be in 2024. Oops. Okay, I'm just going to leave those 4 in. Then I can choose my existing expenses that I expect to have to pay. And then it's going to give me my accounts payable. So this is what I'm expecting to pay based on what I have in my system for accounts payable. So pretty much you can base this off of, you know, which week, what is due, and put those numbers in. And you can finish your cash flow projection that way. So just a little bit on the cash flow projection. There is also like I mentioned before, a business plan tool that walks you through step by step. We're going to look a little bit more at reports. There is also a report for a budget versus actual graph. And this is my graph for my profit and loss by accounts. So I can choose different date ranges. So here it's showing the months that it's favorable versus unfavorable, my actual versus my budget. I can show my profit and loss by accounts and jobs, or my profit and loss by accounts and classes. If you want to see what is in there, you can always put your cursor above that month and double click, and it will bring up a report showing the variance. And again, you can double click again, and it'll give you an actual report as to why you lost so much money that month, or why you made so much money that month, depending where you are. So that's a pretty cool report. And if you notice that when you're double clicking and things are coming up, you know, really slowly, QuickBooks uses a lot of information gathering when it runs these reports. You go into Edit on the top menu bar, Preferences. What you could do under Reports and Graphs is draw the graphs in 2D and use patterns, but it's not as pretty. I can also look at my next group of expenses. And same with my income accounts. If there's a next group. And this is just giving them to me by month. So if I go way back to the beginning, let's see here. So here's my sales, cost of goods sold. I just click on next group and it brings me by account number and account type to the next grouping. So there's some fun reports out there for graphs, or I should say nice graphs out there under the reports. Let's see, I'm going to answer some questions now. Let's see, make sure I get the next one down. Okay, question. I entered my budget in for the year by class. One of the classes did not show up in budget. Played with the filter. Now I have the budget showing. My new problem is when I look at the P&L for all departments, the budget is doubled in some accounts. What I would do then is go into your reports for your budgets and look at the budget overview by account, or by accounting class is what I would do, and do the account by month and then account by class. You might want to send these to Excel and figure out which class then got doubled in those accounts. So that's how you would, determine that and then go back into the budget and edit that. Okay, thank you for the question. Can you lock the budget? I don't believe you can. That's a really good question, and that would be a really good suggestion for QuickBooks. Because you can set a closing date in the system, but no, not in the budgets. So one thing you might want to do with that, which is a really good question, is in the help menu. Let's see here. You can do feedback and you can do a product suggestion. And that's one thing that would be really good to suggest. Because yeah, it would be a wonderful thing if you could lock that as the administrator, just like you can set a closing date. Another question, can you view the forecast to actual and budget to actual on one report in QuickBooks? And know that you're not able to do. Unfortunately, with the budgeting reports in QuickBooks, there's not a lot of leeway to them. So you can't add the budget with the forecasting. There's not a lot, when you're customizing the report, there is just, not a lot that you can do with it. And there's no place to add the forecast in with that. Okay, and then I had some questions come in. Let's see. I input my budgets and had one class where the budget didn't show in the memorized reports. So if you've got a budget set up as a memorized report, you want to be careful. There was one thing I did want to mention. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes here. If you rename an account in QuickBooks, it will not show up in your budget. So that's a little goofy thing in QuickBooks. And I knew I wrote a note on that, but that's just one thing you need to keep in mind. That if you're renaming an account and you had a budget set up for that account, you're going to need to recreate that on your budget. And that might be part of your problem. But when you're looking in your if you've got a memorized report, you can customize that report and look in your filters, and maybe you've got a filter for your classes. And just if you've got multiple classes, make sure the right ones are checked. And when it comes to the different filters, it's real hard to answer that one over the phone. But yeah, with the memorized report, if it's not giving you what you want, try to recreate it. And if the new one gives you exactly what you're looking for, go into your reports, and you can delete your memorized reports if it is a memorized report by going to the memorized report list. And let's say I want to delete this report. I just right click on it and delete, or I can just highlight it and then delete that memorized report. There are times I've seen where budgets break, and I've had to run several verifications in order to put them back together. So you want to make sure you're always verifying your data. And because if anything does break or get corrupt in data, the verification, which is under File, Utilities, Verify, that will run through your reports or your transactions and put things back together. Let's see. And again, if you don't want, when you're budgeting, if you don't want to see, the sub-accounts, say my labor installation, I don't want to see by assembly or wages. Make sure you put everything just in the title account versus the sub-account. Let's see, I think those were the majority of the questions that I got in so far. And I just wanted to remind you, or let you know, because Corey just sent me a reminder. She's the one that introduced me and said hello in the beginning. But she wanted me to remind you that the session is being recorded and it's going to be sent to all of the attendees this week. So just so you're aware of that, you will be getting an email with that. So there's a lot you can do in budgeting. And again, you want to look at your budget as kind of a decision process for the next year. And again, when you're looking at your reports, don't feel bad if your budget doesn't quite coincide with what actually happens, because it's just a guideline. You can budget the best you can, and based on that budget and the economy, especially this year, it can, different things can affect everything. It could be something out of your control. So don't feel bad about that. And again, the profit and loss by account is one of the best reports for budgeting. If I don't want to see, dollars and cents, I can, again, look at that profit and loss standard report for this fiscal year. I'm just kind of showing by month. And if I don't want to see all the dollars and cents, I can, under custom reporting or customize the report, I can change my fonts and numbers. And I can divide everything by 1,000. I can get rid of the cents. I don't want to see anything except, if you want to see anything except zero amounts. So different ways you can run this report. So I'm going to say divided by 1,000 and without cents. So these are based in thousands. So it gives you a little bit more, of a general dollar amount. Well, let's say I just don't want to see it by cents. It still cleans it up quite a bit. So just another, customization report you can do. Let's see. Anybody, I think we might get done early today. Any other reports or questions on budgeting that you might want to type in a question for? We've gotten some good questions so far. Unfortunately, I said before, QuickBooks doesn't have a lot of leeway when it comes to your budgeting report. So you're kind of stuck with looking at these and what little you can do with customizing them. If you just maybe want to see certain accounts, instead of just income and expense accounts, maybe you just want to see your expense accounts. You can change that and click OK, and now it's going to give me my budget for just the expense accounts, budgets versus actual. I can also choose specific accounts. When you click on the account, you can go up to multiple accounts and pick and choose which accounts you want to see budgets for. So there's a lot of different ways, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are some different filters that you can apply. Some of these aren't really going to pertain to budgets, but there's things you can play with. And again, you can memorize your budget reports by clicking on the Memorize button. But if you've done filtering or anything else with those reports, you want to be careful if you change any names of the accounts. Maybe you add accounts during the year. If in the case you're adding an account, well, it wasn't there last year, so you're not going to have a budget for it. So that might be something that would prompt you to modify your budget. So just a couple different things. And I don't see any other questions coming in. So what I will do is I am going to bring up a journal entry. And I will give you my information, the memo. So if you do come up with questions later on while you're working on your budget, you can give me a call or send me an email. Debbie Denny, and my direct line is 920-337-4558. And my email is ddenny@hawkinsashcpas.com. So that is my information if you'd like to write that down. And if you've got any specific questions, regarding budgeting, we can discuss those. And again, if you're in the process of budgeting right now, which is a good time to start looking at budgeting for 2021, it's, time to start looking at those reports and, pulling up that budget and seeing what you can do for next year. It's a good planning tool, and I know a lot of businesses and nonprofits are very into and decision-making. They do a lot with budgets. So just a few, hopefully I helped you a little bit today. That gave you a few tips and tricks. And as I said before, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And we're going to get done about 15 minutes early. I just want to thank you all for sitting through budgeting. And hopefully you can get out and vote today if you haven't already. I voted about a month ago by doing an absentee ballot, which was amazingly easy. So get out and vote today. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next roundtable, I hope. Bye-bye.